That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm starting to look at things that need to be in my design. So I'm approaching this from what does a user need, right? What does the user need to be successful? So I need a button. I need a place to put a question. I need a place to put multiple choice questions. I need a place to put the answer, right? Or whether they're right or wrong as I'm looking at this design here. So the way that helps me to frame this is I'm going to go back to this, and you're going to say, John, you're harping on this, but the UI is the place where I'm going to put everything, right? That means that's some HTML. So that means framing in places for where I want to put messages, places where I want to put things for them to interact. I'll make them, but maybe not hook them up yet to any interactivity. So that helps me. Just like I know it needs to kind of look, I know it kind of needs to look like, this. So I can start by building some HTML, and maybe I don't get all of these things in the same place, but at least I can get it pretty close. So that's why when I start with this, it's like I have an HTML. It's like I need a place to put, let's go back to this. I need a place to, like a link to the high scores, right? So, so I'm just going to put a link to the high scores. It doesn't go anywhere yet. Now it's got to be, yeah, that's fine. And why does that look wrong? Oh, because I screwed up with this. That's what I screwed up. All right. So, and I can be building this piece by piece as I go along. All right, there's a link for the high scores. At least I got that. Let's come back to this. I need maybe a little place to put the starting message. So I can create a div for that. And, maybe it's a H1 coding quiz challenge. And then, maybe there's a paragraph that describes what the thing is. And then I have a button of some sort that says start quiz. And, as I keep going along, that's a star quiz. I need to start it. I also need a place to put the timer. So I'm going to put this in like a, we'll call this I'll just class timer container. And I don't know what that timer is, but it's that's where I'm going to put it. And maybe I just put 300 seconds in there for now. And then it looks kind of like, oh wait, I should probably put this. And you notice I'm not worrying about the layout right now. I'm just putting out the functional pieces. And this right here is, it's a spot for, so this is like the intro container. So now I'm starting to see like all the different pieces. I need a container for the questions, right? So I don't know where this is going to be yet, but I'm going to call this class question container. Hopefully you kind of see what I'm trying to get at. And then this is the actual place to put the question and a place to put some answers. And maybe this is an unordered list. And each one of these is an LI. So here's answer 1. And what you can see, I'm just kind of framing it in. I'm not worried about how it works yet. I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about the events yet. All I'm trying to do is just get myself off the ground. So this is when I need to actually put in a little question. So here's my question. a dumb question, but it's basically a placeholder. And call this, maybe I'll put here, time left. So I know, gosh, it's so bad with the typing. And then here's another span. That is class timer. So when I look at this, it doesn't look pretty. Well, let me ask you, is there anything else I'm missing from my user interface? These are the things that the user needs to see. They're not necessarily correct yet, but at least I got all those pieces. Let's go back to the README. Preview README. When I answer a question incorrectly, time subtracted from game is over, save my initials and my score. So the thing that's missing is the high score. I'm going to leave that out for now because I feel like I could figure that out later. For now, I'm just going to get the game to work. Does that seem like a pretty good strategy? Does this make you feel a little bit better already? Just like, you know, I could do this. For some of us that haven't started this, I can do this. Okay. That way I'm not worried about making it look pretty. I can make that later, right? Let's get into the next piece. When I click the start button, all right, let's go back to here. So I've kind of framed out my UI. So clicking the start button, that's the event that starts the whole thing. So here's an important event. So I'm thinking about the events. What other events are there? Just thinking out loud.
Don't you make that intro card disappear? Or...
Right, but that's not an event. That's something that happens as the result of an event.
So the timer?
The timer going down each second is an event because we got to check to see, have you answered the question yet? Have you answered the question yet? Have you answered it yet? That's an event. So at some point we got to handle that. The button click is the other one. And then there's probably, what other events? I can think of two more.
Score increasing?
The decrement in time.
Well, the decrement in time, that's the timer.
For getting one wrong.
Wrong answer.
Getting one right or wrong. So actually when they click an answer button, that's an important event. So you see how I'm kind of cataloging these things. I haven't decided where they go, but I know I've got some events. Maybe I don't know all of them right up front, right? But I'm starting to think, okay, these are the things that I need to handle at some point. There's probably one more event, but it's like, what happens when we run out of questions? That's an event, right? The game's over. How we're going to handle this stuff, we don't know yet, but those are things we need to do. So I'm going to go to my JavaScript file, and which I don't have yet. And this is my index HTML. Here's my folder, right? My folder is called dev. I'm calling it dev. So in the root of my folder, I got index.html. I'm going to create a folder in here. And for me, I like to have an assets folder. And inside of that assets folder, I like to have a JavaScript file or folder. And inside of that assets, I'd also like to have a CSS folder. So inside my JavaScript, I'm going to create a new file and I'm just going to call it app.js. Whatever. Now, in order for this to be useful, I have to include it into my folder or in my file here. So I'm going to create a script and source is going to go into assets.js, app.js. So now I've included that. I'm not even worried about the CSS yet. So events, right? This is kind of a pseudocode. Start game, timer, count down, increment. Really, it's every second, right? And every second, what do we got to do? Every second, that has to be handled. What happens every second? Say we haven't answered a question. There's a question on the board.
It's checking to see if there's time left.
Yeah, it's got to check to see if there's any time left to actually answer the question. So that's an event. So timer countdown increment. Another event is selecting an answer. And one more is game over. Game over. Another event is kind of clicking the view high scores. And maybe another event is when you enter a high score. We don't know how these are going to be handled yet, but these are probably the events that we need to handle. Does this help as far as like kind of itemizing the things that need to happen in this game? We haven't even written a single line of code, but I can, as I'm trying to wrap my mind around the problem, I know that these are things that I have to handle. Are there any questions on this right now? Does this feel like it helps a little bit? I'm getting some nodding heads. Cool.
Yep.
And you know, again, this is the problem solving part. The code part, you should be able to just go read some documentation and write the code. This is all about how do I actually solve this problem. So the other part was, so let's go back to this diagram. So handlers, well, we'll get to that as we start to handle these events. So we'll need to have a function that handles the click. And we'll have a function that handles when the thing is counting down, da, 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 da. I think these kind of go hand in hand. State, what do we need to keep track of? This is the data that makes our game go. So this is actually not in the HTML. It's our variables, right? So I need to keep track of, what are the things I need to keep track of?
Which question we're on?
Sorry, Robert?
I apologize. Which question we're on?
Yeah, which question we're on?
The scoring.
The score?
What's been clicked or what's not clicked.
So that means which answer we choose at a certain time?
Yes.
Okay. I think
Timer.
that state's a little more ephemeral, but the timer is really important.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So let's see. So my variables would be, we already discussed, let's see, the timer. So, and then it's not only the timer, but the time that's left, right? We have to keep track of how much time is left. The score, the current question. But there's one more big piece, which is kind of the main chunk of our work, our main chunk of our game.
The questions themselves.
Questions themselves, right? So questions, and of course, along with that, their answers. We also need to know which answer is the right answer. So questions, they're basically, it's not really, it's like their choices, right? And the choices and the correct answer. So there's got to be a way to choose the right thing. What other variables would there be? I'm thinking that should be enough for now. That's enough for now. So I think of these variables, which ones are going to change during the course of the game? That's another thing I'm thinking of. Like, what is kind of like my seed data, and what is data that changes during the course of the game?
The score and the time left.
Score and time left and the timer are all going to be changing, right? The current question is going to be changing. But the questions, all the choices and the correct answer, does that change? Or is that just kind of like...
Stays the same.
It's like a list of questions. So it's imagine that list of questions. If I wanted to create an entire different game, I could use the same framework and just bring in a whole new set of questions. So this is the way I'm thinking about how this thing should go together. So maybe the first thing I do is I just create a variable, and these are my questions. And what variable type should it be?
An array.
It's a collection of stuff, so it should be an array. And an array of what, though? Are questions like a simple, I mean, a question is not just a question, it's a question and this other stuff. So what data type do you think that should be?
An object.
Sorry, is that Alexis saying that?
Yeah, an object.
Okay, you're kind of quiet, so
Sorry.
it's all right. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for an object. So I can say, here is the question I want to ask. And I don't know what the text is right now, so I'm not going to spend time developing a bunch of questions. I'm just going to say question 1. Question 1. And gosh, I got to type it. So then choices. What data type should this thing should it be?
Object.
And so if it's an object, what would be valuable if it was an object?
We can just like assign a correct answer to each question within the object and access all the questions in the object.
So, well,
You want an array of choices?
so yeah, I mean, Nick, I already have an object for the question, but the choice is inside the question. And I think Kyle's suggesting we use an array because we're going to have a bunch of them, right?
And then you could just use their index to
So
reference them.
this could be choice 1, choice 2. And, you know, we go back and we could fill in this data later. And you can see my technique is to not spend time, the actual question content, that's less germane than the actual logic. I'll spend time doing that later. I can make it as fluffy or as non-fluffy later as I want. So then you're right. So as Kyle was suggesting, we needed to denote what is the correct answer. And we could just say, or I just say answer. And it would be the index. And in this case, maybe it's index 2. Cool. So this is how I'm creating my questions. You get the idea. This could be, so now I have 2. That allows me enough to where I can just kind of build a game of some sort, right? That's enough. If I want to do another one. Oh wait, this won't work. 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's the index of the element in the array. And all right, we got 3. So now that I got that data, I'm going to keep track of time left. So I'll make that a variable. I'm just going to call it time left. And I'll seed it with, I don't know, we'll say 60 seconds for now. I'm not even sure if this is the way I want to do it yet. I'm just guessing that we'll start with, each question will start with 60 seconds. The actual timer, right? All right, well, I'll just create a timer. This is the thing we set interval to. Right now, I'm not ready to use it because, you know, I'm not ready to use it yet, but I know I need some memory to store that. Does that make sense? So as I'm thinking through this, I'm not sure where I'm going to use it, but I know I need some memory for it. So score. So I'll create one for the score. Of course, it starts off as 0. Current question. Current question is what when we start off? What would our current question be? What should be
And
the,
array.
well, I mean, our current question is, it's a lookup to which one in the array we're using. So we can use an array index. So the first one in the array will be, current question will be 0. And as the game goes along, we can change that. Let's see. So we got, all right, we got all our variables. So let's start now hooking up these events. So the very first event is start the game. So that means on my button, my start button, it doesn't have any identifiers on it. So I could give it an ID, maybe call this start button. And come back to my app. Let's just put an event handler right on that. So that means document. Oh, so that's the other thing is, so these are my events and my variables, but in order to make a connection to my UI, I also need variables for each UI element. So these are my state variables. So I'm going to call these state variables because it's what keeps track of what's going on in the game. It's actually the data that makes the game logical. But I need to have hooks into my UI. So I'm going to call these application variables, subtle semantics, whatever. But it allows me, oh, that's not the one. Oh, yeah, it is. So I need to have a hook to this start button. So I come back here. I'm going to create a variable called start button L. And it's basically my connection to the element inside the UI. If I want to change the way the UI looks, I have to have a little connection to it. So this is where I say, all right, document, I want you to get element by ID. In this case, the ID is start button. So that's something that's going to need to change at some point. If I go back to my index, I'm going to need to probably change this intro container, right? Because it disappears. So I need to get a handle on that. So I can say intro container L, and then use document to get, but in this case, because it's a class, document.get, no, it's query selector. And in this, I use CSS selectors. Remember, we're not using jQuery in this assignment, no jQuery. So this one is intro container. So I think hopefully this is giving you an idea of how to start this at least. Container. And you know, because we only have like 8 minutes left, I just want to make sure you kind of understand where I'm going. So I would go through and create the rest of these element hooks. And the very first thing I would do would be, let's get the start button and let's assign an event listener to it. Add event listener. And again, we're not using jQuery. This is plain vanilla JavaScript. This is where we're using two different syntaxes. The type is it's a click. And the listener is, this is the function that actually handles the click. Inside of it, we're brought the event itself. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to alert start game. So if I run this now, cool. At this point, what should happen? I've started the game. What should happen at this point?
Timer should start.
Timer should start. What else should happen?
Question 1 should show up.
Question 1 should show up. What else should happen?
You should be able to select the answer, so you can go to the next question.
Should be able to select an answer. That's true. but also this, let's go back to our original thing here. See how the intro thing just kind of goes away?
Yeah.
So we have to hide the intro thing, we have to show a question, and we have to start a timer. That's what happens on that one event. You see how I'm like stepping through each piece by piece, as the user experiences it. I come back to what the user experiences. And so I'm not going to code the whole thing, but I just want you guys to get a feel like this is how you get started. Is this helping anybody? For those that are like, I didn't know how to get started, this is a
Yes.
strategy. And not only that, it's a strategy you can take to the next application, which is, okay, John gave me this silly little slide that he keeps pointing to, but it's a great way to start organizing your thoughts on how to get the thing started. Because I mean, intuitively you can play a game, you know how it clicks, but how do you build each piece? This helps me to organize it. All right, questions?
I just had a question about local storage.
Okay.
Do I have to like create a variable to store stuff?
How do you use local storage? So, well, that's a little bit different of a question. That's really more just how does JavaScript work, right? Which is a fair question. I'm like asking really more about homework for in
Okay.
general, and sort of the also the pseudocoding element of how to get started on a problem. Does this feel intuitive in some ways, or I really want, if anybody this doesn't make sense, I need to know.
I think what you've explained makes sense. I think part of what I wouldn't have known really is like the depth of elements or the variables that I'm creating. Like you were like, okay, this is an element, or this is a variable, this is a variable, and you kind of like, you're like, this makes sense. That's intuitive. I think that intuition of what I need to include in my variables or what I need to include in my events as I'm writing down that framework is what's not intuitive, and that's why kind of getting started, you get frozen where you're like, okay. So, but the exercise with Dan was very helpful when we're practicing the pseudo coding and whatnot. But
Right.
I think that's kind of what freezes me up, at least in this beginning phase. Is I know I need to identify the events. I know I need to identify the variables, but intuitively I don't know what those are. And
Okay.
so I kind of just freeze up and I'm like, what do I start?
Right. So, did this help at all though? I mean, as far
Oh,
as
yeah.
like, I mean, it's like, you're right. It's like, which ones do I need? And I kept telling you, I don't really know. I'm just going to go with what I think it is right now. I'm going to list them
Sure.
here. And
Yeah.
then what I liked about it's like, we actually have this trigger that starts the game. Once you start that game, we can actually, okay, well, I got to hide this. I got to start a timer. All that's intuitive, right? But it's just like you have to stop and think about each part. At that stage, I got to start a timer. I got to show a question, all that kind of stuff. So I guess as far as like you're saying, how do I get? It's like that intuition thing is a little hard to get. Is that's what you're
I imagine it just comes with experience doing
a
it.
little bit, but it's also like this is the puzzle. Somebody's just given you a Rubik's Cube and said, how do you figure this out? There's no code in a Rubik's Cube. It's just sort of like, how do I find the patterns to make this thing move the way I want it? It's really kind of similar to this. Or how do you build a tissue box like this? It's like, it's any sort of engineering. You have to kind of intuit some sort of way. Well, if I don't know, maybe it's just a contrived idea.
I hear you.
But you get what I'm saying. It's like at some point, it's like you have to step back and think of it as a person. If you were a person actually putting this game out with pieces of paper, like a paper game, how would you have to do it as a paper game? Not even with any of the code. That's the puzzle solving. That's the problem solving aspect.
So I do have a question. So, because it shows in the example of the coding quiz that you know, one question is on the screen at a time, and then once how can you get the screen, or basically how can you get one question per screen, or have it go one question at a time?
Okay. Well, maybe what I can do is I'm trying to think of.
Does that make sense what I'm
I
asking?
totally get what you're saying. I'm trying to do it without. I'm trying to explain it to you without telling you exactly how to do it. But Christine, I think if I look at this, does one question just kind of take over what was there before? Sorry,
Yes, it does. I
So
was
that
muted.
means, think of it, there's like, so the strategy is there's a place that holds the question. And then I just take the guts out and replace it with some other guts. That is the strategy. And that's what you would do if you if you were doing this on a table with pieces of paper, there would be a place on the table that you would put the piece of paper with the question and with the answers. And then when they answered that, you take that away and you put a new piece of paper in its place. It's because the user is expecting to see the question in the same place every time. So that's the strategy. I mean, does that help? I mean, you're not in code world, you're just in person world, right? That's how you would do it if you had a kid in front of you and you were playing a quiz game with them, that's what you would do. So that means, let's go back to my HTML. You'll notice that I had this place, I called it question container. And inside of it is this place that has a question with some answers. And this was I just hatched this in knowing that at some point I'm going to throw it away. But this is my sample. This is the sample of my question. And that initially intro container is showed, but question container is not showed. So this is where we start to involve some CSS. Let's create a new CSS file and bring it in up here. And it's 9:30, so it is office hours now. I'm totally.
Bring everybody back for a second.
You could probably bring everybody back and let them know that it's time to go if they'd like.
Okay.
But I will continue with this. So I have a style sheet, and it's href, and is this where it goes? Yeah, this is what I'm doing. Assets, CSS, style dot CSS. So then if I bring this in and let's say initially when my game first starts, the question container is hidden. So one way to hide things is to say display none. And that as my game goes on, I can change the CSS for that to make it display block, which would make it visible again.
Got it.
So, so let's just, for example, so I start this over. Oops, see, I didn't include this correctly. What am I missing?
Are you supposed to do the link relation or the relations style sheet?
Well, relate style sheet, right?
Yeah.
Hey guys, we're in office hours now, so if you want to take off, you're welcome to take off. Thanks for all your hard work today.
Yes. I'm actually brain farting. Is this a href or is it a link? What is this? Should be a href, right? I'm totally brain farting.
Yeah, it should be an href.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, right?
Hold on.
It should be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
link.
Yeah, sorry. It should be link. That's what it is. This is a link to a style sheet rather than a style.
Yep.
Duh. Okay, that helps. And if I do this, okay, now in my, whoops, I'll do this. in my assets folder, there should be a CSS and style sheet. So if I run this, see how my questions, they're still in the code, but they're hidden for now. And
Okay.
this is open. So what was our first event was that button getting clicked. So maybe my intro container L, I can set its style. Am I doing this right? JavaScript. This is what happens with jQuery. My brain gets all effed up. It's like trying to separate with jQuery versus, I think it's the container L, we want to set its style display equal to none. And we need a link to the question container, which defaults to be hidden, right? We need, let's see, we create a variable question container L. It seems like a lot of extra work, right? It's like, but this is question container. That's fine. So question container L display gets block. So now when I refresh this and I hit start quiz, see how I took away the intro container and replaced it with a quiz? These are the steps. At this point, the timer should be started. It's the other thing that would start here. But then the question, it's like, so if we go back to our kind of checklist, oh, back here, sorry, to our app. So I've already kind of handled this one. Don't have this one yet. Don't have that. Don't have that. But I've got this. Sorry. And there's a spot for all of these. There's a spot for that. Got a spot for that. So basically, we need to create a timer at this point. How is this feeling? You feel like this could kind of cascade into something? What I was hoping to really just sort of beat home is like how to start this. And
Much better.
Yeah, does that help?
Yes.
And not only this, I'm teaching how to fish. So you go to homework 5, hopefully there's some similarities here. And it's not a game, it's a day planner. But you can start thinking about all the pieces, the actual UI pieces you need to put on the day planner. And then you start thinking about the events that have to happen. And, you know, there's, I don't know that there's a timer in there, but there is a time element that's involved. When you refresh the page, it checks to see what time it is. When you refresh the page, that's an event, right? How's this feeling? So, I mean, there was one question Alexis had about local storage. Before I get into that, I do want to say there is this, so one more piece of pseudocode, right? So this is basically, I'm setting the display. This, instead of just showing the question, I have to pick the first question and build the question display, right? Because I haven't done that yet, but I have to build the question display and then show hide the intro. So building the question display is a piece of work, right? Because building the question display is going to entail what pieces? Let's go back to this. there's the question. What pieces do I need to actually put in there? I'm going to ask Dania. I'm looking at this question, and what are the pieces that I actually need to put in each question when I build it?
I'm gonna pass. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What do you think, Christine?
Well,
Repeat
because I
the
was gonna.
question again.
Oh,
Sorry, what?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine. I'm still not gonna answer it, but can you
you're
repeat the
just
question
fine.
again?
So, yeah, what needs to go into each question?
Yeah, we're building just this thing right here.
Sure. So what needs to go into each question is the question itself,
Right,
possible answers,
right,
the correct answer.
right. But I mean, now we're building the UI. Those answers they're actually what though? They're words on a
Button.
they're words on a button. I know it seems
Oh,
like,
okay, gotcha.
but you see what I'm saying? It's like I have to build a button. Oh, I have to word on a button. So that
Okay.
button then, a button implies what? What does a button imply?
It's got to be clicked.
It's going to be clicked, which generates what?
An event listener.
It creates an event. So let's go back to our event listeners that we created, our events that we had in our list. So selecting an answer, that's one of our events. So when we build our questions and we build those answers, each answer is going to be a button, and that button needs to have an event listener on it so it can handle that event. See, now I'm like, it's starting to pull apart as I drill down farther and farther. I'm starting to, the actual where these things are supposed to come, they reveal themselves. It's like, I don't know it all right up at front. Okay, I just can't. I don't know all the things I'm going to need right up front. And that's okay. The emerging requirements, emerging features. Because so there is a trick to building those buttons, because here's the thing is those buttons have to come in, they're listening for clicks, and then they go away. So you have to have a strategy for putting button clicks on, or click handlers on buttons. We did talk about event delegation. Here's what event delegation is. I'm going to add a click listener to the document. So that every time anything on the document is clicked, it will get picked up. So I can console log the event. So if I come back to this here, if I click over here, the document has picked it up. Let me clear that out. Console. So when I clicked over here, that was what was, a mouse event happened. So it means that anything in my document will get handled. So if I click here, there's another one. I click this button, that's actually gets picked up as well. If I click this link, it gets picked up as well. So what I'm getting at is that's kind of useful so that when things are created, I can still be collecting clicks on them. The question is how do I check to see what was actually the thing that was actually clicked on? So if I come back to my event handler here, the event has, the event has this thing called a target. This is the element that was actually clicked on. So when I click on this button, it'll show that the target was the button right there. So what I can do is I can then say, hey, does the thing that's clicked on have a certain class? So let's do this. Instead of let's do event.target. We can say if event.target class list. So this is, let's just actually, just for the heck of it, come into our index.html. And let's just for the heck of it, I'm going to create a button and put it in here. Oh, but it's got to be an actual element. Okay, and I'm going to give it a class so that I know what kind of, if this is a, I'm going to call this an answer button. So when I come here, I can say if class list, let's see, how do I do this in JavaScript without jQuery? Ah. Class list contains JavaScript. Yeah, so it's just as simple as that. So you can see if class list contains, and why am I saying class list? It's because maybe it has multiple classes on it. And so I'm just looking for something that has the class, we called it answer button. Oops. So let's refresh this, start the quiz. Here's an answer. If I click this, I know that I've got an answer button here. That's how I know I've got an answer, is because I've filtered out clicks here for just ones that have the answer button class. So that's a strategy for, whenever all I need to do is just create an answer button, and that click handler will handle it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Alexis had a question about local storage. So how do you use local storage? Well, let's say, now I'm contriving an answer or example here. Oh, here's another thing. How do I know which answer was selected? All I know is that I've clicked a button that's an answer button, but how do I know which one has been selected? At this point, I don't, right? Well, we have this strategy, this coding strategy called data attributes. So if I come back to here and I create an attribute, it turns out on an HTML element, I can put whatever attributes on there I want. So I'm going to call this ID or index, maybe data index. I can call it Fred if I wanted to. I'm just calling it data index because that kind of makes sense. So this is a strategy for how to carry some data about what that button is through the button, because this information is really useful at the place where we're handling the click. So I can get the attribute off of something. And so here I'm going to say event, because remember the button is at the thing that was actually clicked on in this case is the button. Event.target is the button. I can get the attribute off of the button by doing this. Get attribute. And the attribute that I want to get is data index. So if I come back here, let's refresh this page. I start my quiz. I've got a couple answers. Once I click one of these, I got answer 0. I got answer 1. And this is how you can tell which thing's been clicked. Is this kind of helping? So the strategies that we've learned
Yes.
here on how to pseudocode, using my little event loop. I'm going to keep harping on that because I think it'll be useful all the way through everything we do in front-end development. And then, yeah, so once you, the other one was, so event delegation, that's what this is. This is event delegation. And this whole thing right here is using a data attribute. That is another strategy. And these are all things that we taught in class. If you're looking for more examples on how to, about data attributes, about event delegation, there are code samples in week 4 that you can go find and look through. And if you don't know where they are, please ask one of us. But I strongly suggest you go through those activities and see, oh yeah, there's the event delegation. Oh yeah, there's, and one of the TAs can definitely help you with that. So Alexis still has this question about local storage. So how do we throw stuff in local storage? Well, local storage is a key value pair. So you give it a, it's like creating a variable. It's like creating a variable, but you're using local storage. So local storage is a object that's given to us by the browser. So we can say local storage. Oh, let's do this. I can say local storage. I want you to set an item. The key for this is good. Let's just say right now I'm going to store the answer for some silly reason. This is not useful for this homework, by the way. I'm just trying to help Alexis out. So I'm going to store something at current answer, and I'm going to store this value. In fact, it might be better to pull it off here and say selected index and bring selected index. I can then reuse this here and I could use it there. So now I've stored this. Well, once I click this, let's actually watch. So Alexis, to look at what's in local storage, I'm going to refresh this page. We can come into the application tab on the Chrome DevTools, and we select local storage. We can see what's actually been stored here. In this case, I've got nothing, which is totally fine because I haven't run it yet. But once I restart this app, and once I click one of these answers, I just took current answer and I put it right there. The next time it's going to replace what's there because I'm using the same key value. Does that help, Alexis?
Yeah, thank you so much.
So then when you want to get it back out, let's just say at the very beginning here, if there is a console log, we can go local storage, get item, and you give it the key, which in this case is current answer, current underscore answer. So if there's something in local storage, or if I refresh this page, go to console, it's going to give me what's in local storage. So let me start the quiz again. I'm going to choose answer 2. That's what's now in local storage. Refresh my page. Oh, wait. That will make it 0. So that's what's in local. Hopefully that helps, Alexis. Now, what you can store in local storage is only a string. So you can't store an object there. You can't store, an array there. But what you can do and I know we've done this in some of our examples. Let's just say I want to store my questions there. In order, our questions is what data type, Alexis?
The variable questions is an array,
Right? So what I just told you, local storage stores strings. Can I store my questions in there?
No.
No. But what I can do is I can turn my array into a string temporarily. And the way we do that is we stringify. How do we do that? So let's say I want to store my questions.
Oh, is this the JSON thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to like set questions to, and what you do is you go JSON, which is, that is a service. It's part of what the browser gives us. It's a tool the browser gives us. And one of the things it'll do is it'll stringify a complex data type. So in this case, we're going to just stringify our questions. So when I refresh this page and go look at what's in local storage, you'll see that, whoa, I have my questions. And this is a string representation of my questions. That's not an actual array. It's just a string representation of them. So if I want to reuse them when I come back in, to get stuff out, you have to parse JSON parse. So if I want to, let's console log my question list. I'm going to do a JSON dot parse. I'm going to JSON dot parse what is in local storage. So I got to get it out of local storage first. Get item. Questions. I spell it right. Now if I refresh this, I've just been able to pull the questions out of local storage that way. So these are all things that you need, little skills you need to be able to be successful. Now, what do we need local storage for in homework 4? What is that? What do we need that for?
The high scores?
High scores, right? So that means after a score, once a game is done and somebody submits a high score, that's when you're updating local storage. When do you actually need to read local storage?
When you refresh the page?
Well, what's up here in the upper left-hand corner?
View high scores? Oh, the other page.
So there's been 2 strategies to do the high score. One, you can create a new page that shows the high scores, or you can just replace what's here with the high scores. You know, just do it all in one page, a one single page app. Hopefully this gives you guys some gas. I mean, not the farty kind of gas, the kind that gets you going, right? I'm a dad, I gotta make fart jokes. It's just in my blood. My kids don't laugh, you know.
But it's fun.
Yeah, fart jokes are funny. I'm sorry, I think they're still funny. Okay, any other questions on homework 4? Or any questions? Oh, no, anything.
Mine's more of a comment. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that it was helpful. I mean, I gave you a bunch of code. But more importantly, I think by showing the actual, like, starting from scratch, hopefully that was helpful more than anything.
The whole time I was just like, oh, I feel so dumb.
You're not, though. You're not. I think we get overwhelmed. And here's the thing, becoming a teacher here, I recognize a lot of what I'm teaching you is to just settle down. Just settle down. Because I get that way. Like I wake up in the morning, I stroll into my office here, and there's 3 emails from different people. I need this is broken, that doesn't work. And immediately I'm just, yeah, and I can't actually function. I have to like find a way to just settle down and just use my little reason brain to like come up with a solution that is seated in everything that I can. So we're teaching you code, but really we're trying to leverage your ability to like problem solve this stuff. So that when you get a job and somebody says, I need you to solve this problem for me. I need you to, I've been talking about this because it's what I'm doing at work. I need you to build a podcast that collects information from a podcast distributor, but brings it into our website. We need to have a custom player that brings a transcript in. And, you know, we need to have special like markers in there. And, you know, we're going to have different presenters and all this stuff. So how do you bring all that stuff together? That has nothing to do with code. It has to do with like, how do I actually pull what are the pieces? How do I fragment this into smaller chunks? And my strategy is to come from the user in. Oftentimes, I've been talking about another app at work where it's all about the data that's on those forums. The product is some data that needs to be submitted to the government. So the problem originally solved from a database standpoint. We'll model the data and we'll go out from the data. That is another strategy, and I think that usually fails from a user standpoint. From a data standpoint, it's great, but from a user standpoint, they're like, this makes I'm just looking at big long tables because that's the way it's been modeled. So as a strategy, that's kind of why it's really useful to learn this front end stuff first, because you have to like put yourself in the seat of the user. And the best apps start there, in my opinion. What is it that we like about certain Apple products or certain, because they're user friendly. Certain things are user friendly. Okay, it's 10. Any other questions? I don't know who else left besides us.
I'm gonna go. Thank you so much,
You
John.
bet, Alexis. Good luck.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
It looks like the majority of the class is gone.
Who's left, Ben? Is there? I haven't.
I kind of have a question, but it's not that urgent.
Well, I think if we're closed up on homework 4, let's see. Andrew, how are you feeling about this stuff?
Yeah, I think I'm getting it now.
Okay, cool. Well, take this, see if you can march with it, and then when you come up to a next roadblock, just reach out to one of us and we'll help you get you through. But hopefully this gets you through. And same thing with you, Dania, she's gone.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, you bet. So Lexi, what do you got?
So it's about the project.
Okay.
I'm just I kind of figure I just sort of talk out what my thinking is, and then you can tell me if I'm going on a weird track so I don't waste a bunch of time. So we're doing a recipe one, and we're using Spoonacular.
Yep.
The first, like, if we're searching by ingredient, and then it's supposed to display some recipes that are like an option for the user. The first call that I found that you can search by the ingredient, it doesn't actually display the recipes or a URL for it. It just has like the title of the recipe and the ingredients in it. So I found another call on Spoonacular that does link to where it's getting their recipes from, like an outside website.
Okay.
So the plan that we have is it'll, like when the user enters their ingredient, it'll display all of the results on a second, like a results page. So it'll have like a list of like 10 recipes. And then when they click the recipe, it should take them to that recipe on another, like on the external site, so they can look at it and follow it.
Okay.
There's other parts to it too, but I'm not doing those parts, so I'm not thinking about them.
Fair.
I'm trying to think of the best way to build my calls and stuff, because I need to take the recipe ID that is part of that first call, and and then use that in the second call when they click it.
Right.
So what I've done so far is when it runs that first call, it displays all of the results in a list.
Yep.
And I've made each of those list items like clickable. And I've attached a data attribute to each of those list items. That is the ID of the recipe.
Right.
So that I can use that data attribute number in the link to the second call.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then that happens when they click on it, because I don't want to waste time like loading it up for every single like possible recipe if they're not interested in it, or it's like it's not doing it or something like that. So my thinking was like I was looking into like simulated clicks for like a second kind of like click function to run that second API call, but then I was like, is this just going down the wrong path? So then I figured I'd ask before I started.
Right there, that just sounds kind of awkward. Maybe I'm missing something. It's like you're showing a list of recipes,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you click a recipe, there's an ID on it,
Mm-hmm.
and that ID should take you to another place.
It should, but when you click it, so it has the ID attached to it, and then on that click event, it's running that second Ajax call.
Okay.
So that's why, like, so when you're clicking it, it's already doing something. It's doing the call. So
Right.
then I don't know how to like then after it calls and gets a response, then push you to the next page.
Oh, so the second call goes and gets a link to an external link.
Yeah.
Oh.
So then I would like, I know how to like, I have it written so it's like then function response is like you get the link, you pull the link out, but then I was like, well, then how do I use the link?
Well, there's two ways you could do it. You could maybe as you're building that list, you could go make a call to get, that just seems so ass backwards. It just seems wrong. I mean, it's like really well, or not well thought out.
Yeah.
Not from you. They're not well thought out.
I was like digging through their documentation, trying to find like one call that would give me a link, like a URL and like a title and like using ingredients, and like none of them did. It was so frustrating.
Yeah.
Wait, which API are you using?
Spinacular.
Oh, okay. I did MealDB and it actually does that.
Maybe go look into MealDB, which I think is free, right? Totally free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So that
API
might
number 3 is the charm.
simplify, right? Because I mean, but to answer your question, Lexi, what you can do, you can force people, you can set window location to a URL, and that will just basically be like a redirect. So if
Okay.
you ever have a place that you want to send somebody, you can use window location and just set it equal to a URL, and boom, they're gone. They just move on.
Okay.
That's a simple way to do it.
Cool. I'll look into that, but hopefully I won't have to use
Yeah.
it.
I mean, you should look into it as a thing, you know,
As just the general knowledge.
yeah, because you'll need it. Yeah, simulating clicks, that usually is a bad sign.
Yeah, I was like, this seems dumb.
That's not dumb. It just means you're thinking too hard. That's all.
Yeah, I'll check out MealDB. Thanks, Selma.
Yeah,
No problem.
I think that one's fairly simple to use, right?
Yeah, it's just really limited.
That's okay. We don't need much.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think for this app, that's fine.
We had another
We're
one.
just trying to stay simple with it.
I think that's exactly the right strategy.
Mhm.
For homework 1, it's about, I'm sorry, for project 1, it's about, you know, learn how to work in a team, learn how to fix Git merge problems, learn how to do a couple different things, learn a new front end CSS framework. That's all really cool stuff.
Which is hell.
You know, but that's hard. That's hard just right there. Like, how do I read documentation? Like, I was working with Sai today, and we're just going through the foundation documentation. It's just like, well, this is kind of hard to read. And God bless her, she spent a lot of time working on something. And, you know, I keep telling you guys, it's not wasted time. You're learning how screwed up this is sometimes. It's not like you can just buy a book and it's like, yay, I got it.
It's gonna be the third time I'm building a API call.
There you go.
But now I'm a pro, so it's fine. It'll be easy.
And you might get used to a front end library or a front end CSS library, and you're like, oh, this is great. I'm really good at it. And then they change it. Like, so Bootstrap 5 is going to be a little bit different. And so then it's like, which version are you using? And where's the right documentation? And so and React is that way, man. It's so frustrating how React is. They keep changing how you do state. Yeah, it's like, now we're doing it this way. And now we're doing it this way. And no more classes. We're not going to use classes anymore. It's like, shut up, guys. Just settle on something and let's just do it. It doesn't have to be that complex. They're just changing it to be assholes sometimes, I think. And I'm not the only one that thinks that way. Anyway.
Agreed.
Welcome to this profession, right?
I think it'll be a good transition if you come from like another industry that's always changing, like food service.
Always changing.
Easy to stay on your toes.
Yeah. But this is why I keep saying, if you like learning new things, if you like solving puzzles, then this is for you. Being tenacious, like getting to the end of it. Like, it's like, damn it, I know it's just right around the corner. Just one more refresh, one more search. Then this is the thing. All right. So no more questions? All right, because it's like 10:15.
Yeah, I'm good. That's enough fun for one night, don't you think?
Well done, Christine. I'm with you on that.
I'm gonna go study for like 3 more hours.
You guys have a good night. I'll
Ooh,
see you
Lexi.
all Thursday.
Okay, see you, Christian.
I feel like I've been hitting my like study focusing point at like 11 or midnight every night.
I say go with it.
Yeah, I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna study till like 3, 4 a.m. and then I wake up for work at 7:30 and I'm like,
Then you'll end up looking like this, which is no sleep guy. Since
okay.
having kids was like the biggest shift in my life. Ever since having kids, it's just like,
yes,
right?
I think I gained like 30 gray hairs just having a kid.
Yeah, it's like kids just like
in though. That's like the style.
what?
It is, I guess.
Gray hairs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to dye my hair gray, but too much work. It's too dark.
Don't worry, you'll get there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna wait.
Yeah, you'll get there. Just give it a few years.
Hopefully by February when this class is over, I'll be like
You'll
halfway
have a
there.
few. It's all y'all. Just throwing more gray hairs on my beard. Okay. All right. Well, good night.
Bye.
And Franz, thank you for today.
Yeah, it was nice being
Take
here.
care.
Yeah, nice
Everybody
meeting
have
you
a good evening.
Good night, Robert. Good night.
All right, yeah, thank you.
So, I guess we'll see you on Thursday, Franz?
Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have a better picture of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And, hopefully, were you able to? Here, I'm gonna pause it.